Hello and welcome to this webinar hosted by the EU project FLABEL. I am Dr. Laura Fernandez, and on behalf of the FLABEL Consortium, we are delighted that you can join us. We will shortly be sharing the results of our benchmark research that audited the penetration of nutrition information on food labels in more than 35,000 products across Europe's EU27 member states and Turkey. But first, a brief introduction to the FLABEL project. Food labeling to advance better education for life, more commonly referred to as FLABEL, is the first EU-funded research program specifically on nutrition labeling. The three-year project began 1st of August 2008. Our consortium is made up of 12 partners from 8 countries, ranging from academic experts specialized in psychology, nutrition, economics and marketing, retailers, SME representatives, to not-for-profit organizations, making us well-placed to provide state-of-the-art science on how nutrition labels affect consumer behavior through the application of a multidisciplinary approach. We know that governments, food companies and retailers increasingly promote nutrition information on food labels to help the consumer make healthy, informed food choices. However, current use and actual effects on shopping basket composition remain largely unknown. To address this, the FLABEL Consortium will determine how nutrition information on food labels can affect dietary choices, consumer habits, and food-related health issues by researching both the label and other influential factors such as environmental, personal, and product-related factors. FLABEL will also provide best practice guidelines for assessing the impact of different food labeling schemes to be shared with policymakers, the food industry, and other stakeholders. EUFIC's role in FLABEL is to coordinate and manage the administrative aspects of the project, to conduct the first research studies of the project that aim at providing a benchmark of consumers' exposure to nutrition information on food labels in Europe, and to identify the major types of labels that are used. Finally, we will also ensure a wide dissemination of the results as well as stakeholders' involvement. In the present slide, you can see the structure of the FLABEL project, which is organized in work packages, as well as the partners that are responsible for them. I have already mentioned EUFIC's involvement, whose benchmark analysis provides the starting ground for subsequent FLABEL work. The rest of the project will investigate how consumers react to nutrition information on food labels by conducting studies to understand the factors that drive consumers' attention, the label attributes that maximize the reading, the elements that determine the attractiveness of nutrition information on labels, and the extent to which consumers like that information. FLABEL will also explore how the information is understood by the consumer and how good are the labels at helping consumers to make judgments about nutritional properties and overall healthiness of a food product. The results of all those studies will then be put to a real-world test and completed with insight on how nutrition labeling information affects consumer product choices and dietary intake, taking a European perspective with due concern for regional differences between the EU, as well as for individual differences between consumers. Finally, these comprehensive insights will be used to derive implications for different stakeholders. Now I'm pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Stefan Storksvik, who will share the benchmark findings with you. Stefan?
Thanks, Laura, for this very nice introduction to the FLABEL project. And I will now present the results of Task 1 of Work Package 1, which deals with the penetration of nutrition information on food packages in the EU27 and Turkey. On this next slide, you see that in those 28 countries, we selected 3 retailers per country, one from the top 5 market share, one retailer as a consumer cooperative, if that was not available, a national retailer, and thirdly, a discounter, ideally a hard discounter. And at this point, I would like to thank all those retailers that cooperated within the FLABEL project for their help in performing the audit. This physical audit was carried out on all products within 5 product categories that were defined by the consortium. On the next slide, you see those 5 categories. We had sweet biscuits, ready meals, pre-packed, carbonated soft drinks, breakfast cereals, and yogurts. And you can see on this slide what type of products we actually included in the audit and which types of products were not included in the audit. On the next slide, you see that the auditing period was from September 2008 to April 2009. We ended up visiting over 50 different retailers, and the audit included more than 35,000 products across all countries. So this is the first slide on the actual penetration results, giving you the percentage of products in all the countries that we audited, which contain either nutrition information of any kind on the back of pack or on the front of pack, abbreviated BOP and FOP. The dark blue bars indicate the nutrition information on the back of packs, and here we see that the range was from 97% in Ireland to Slovenia at 70% penetration, resulting in an average penetration of back-of-pack nutrition information of any kind of 85%. For the front of pack, we found an average penetration of 48%, the highest being the UK at 82%, and the lowest being Turkey with 24%. On the next slide, you see what format of nutrition information was provided. And here we see the results for tabular or linear nutrition information, giving information about the composition of the foods. And we see that for the back of pack, again indicated in dark blue, the products contained mostly tabular or linear nutrition information on the back of pack, and this resembles the numbers that we find for nutrition information of any kind. So it's mostly the format of tabular linear nutrition information back of pack. And this tabular linear nutrition information refers to the big 4 or the big 8. Big 4 being energy in calories and kilojoules, then carbohydrates, fat and protein, and the big 8 including the big 4 plus saturated fat, sugar, fiber, and sodium. On the next slide, you see one of the formats that was rather found on the front of pack, and this is the GDA system or Guideline daily amounts. Across the 5 product categories, we found that the highest penetration was in the UK with over 60%, going down to less than 5% in Turkey, and being on average 25% on the front of packs, and on average 23% on the back of pack across all countries in these 5 categories. Another format of nutrition information on the front of pack was nutrition claims, where we found that across the 5 categories audited, the range was 25% average penetration on the front of pack and 20% average penetration on the back of pack, ranging from the high countries Portugal, Ireland, and the UK, down to Lithuania, Bulgaria, and Estonia. The next slide on health claims indicates the penetration of health claims across the 5 product categories. And here we see that Ireland leads the list with the highest penetration of health claims. Here on the back of pack, the countries are ranked by back of pack because the highest penetration was found for back of pack. And on average, a penetration front of pack of health claims of 2% across all countries. Then we also looked at health logos across the 5 categories, and here we see overall that health logos are not very widespread across the countries, with a penetration of only 1% back of pack and 2% front of pack. But we see that Sweden and the Netherlands are the leading countries in terms of employing health logos. This slide shows you how we defined health logos within the FLABEL project. Health logos are those used on foods that fulfill certain nutrient criteria, which may vary from logo to logo and also may consider dietary guidelines. They are used on foods that usually represent a better for you option in that specific product category. Below you find a few examples of logos that may be encountered in the stores. This slide shows you the percentage of products that were attractive to children across all products that we audited, and we found in those countries that 5 to 16% of the audited products were products attractive to children. This was based on whether the products contained any kind of iconography, cartoon pictures, funny shapes, and use of color. And we also found that practically all of those products contain some kind of nutrition information. And this was based on the information back of pack, which was the most widespread in general anyway. On the next slide, you then see the total number of products that were audited in the different categories. This first slide showing you the sweet biscuits. And there we see that on average, we audited around 350 products per country, but the range was quite high between around 250 products going up to close to 800 products audited in some countries. In dark blue is indicated the total number, and in light blue is indicated the number of products that contained the nutrition table on the back of the pack, because this was the most widespread format, and it then tells you how many of those products actually contain some kind of nutrition information. The same information for breakfast cereals. Here we see that there's a very high coverage in terms of giving nutrition information, at least as the nutrition table back of pack. And overall, we audited around 200 products on average across the countries. For the pre-packed ready meals, we found that in some countries there were no such meals available in the first place, whereas in others we found more or less high numbers, going up to 300 in the UK. Again, a good coverage in terms of providing nutrition information on those products. But this next slide shows you why in some countries we did not find pre-packed ready meals. It was just that on a cultural basis, the format of providing ready meals was different. Here showing fresh ready meals that would then be packed as the consumer buys them, so they decide about the portions. Then the total products audited across the different countries for carbonated soft drinks. Again, we see around 200 products on average were audited, and sometimes going up to 350. And again, a very good coverage in terms of providing nutrition information on those products. Finally, the information on yogurts. Here we found, again, quite substantial difference in terms of numbers, between 150 roughly in Denmark, going up to Slovakia with more than 650 products, but overall the same story, good coverage in terms of providing nutrition information on those products. With this, I would like to conclude the presentation, pointing out that we visited over 50 different retailers, we audited more than 35,000 products, and we found a very wide penetration of nutrition information in the 5 product categories audited. So we see that on average 85% of products contain nutrition information of some kind, ranging from 70 to 97%. Tabular or linear nutrition information was most widespread, commonly found on the back of pack, averaging 84% compared to the 85% for nutrition information. So very high penetration of this labeling scheme. And nutrition claims and guideline daily amounts, or GDA, were most commonly found front of pack, and they reached up to 37% for the nutrition claims and up to 63% for the guideline daily amounts in some of the countries. We are now ready to take your questions, and thank you for listening in.